Good morning. It's 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rod Arroyo. I'm with Giffords Webster. I am the City of Farmington Hills' planning consultant. My colleague Joe Tangari and members of city administration are also on this call. This program is being recorded. It's going to be available online. In addition, city administration is going to be preparing a summary report for City Council. This is the first of 3 information gathering sessions with the cannabis industry. In August of 2021, the City of Farmington Hills City Council finalized a cannabis industry information gathering and public outreach plan. City Council has been carefully monitoring and has continued to educate itself on changes in regulation in the cannabis industry at the state level, as well as the experiences of other municipalities that have decided to allow for commercial production and sales of cannabis at the local level. The city has not opted to allow commercial, medical, or recreational facilities under the Medical Marijuana Facility Licensing Act of 2016. It did not opt in, or the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act of 2018. It opted out. Most recently, members of City Council in Farmington Hills have expressed a desire to gather additional information from representatives of the cannabis industry regarding the various types of commercial cannabis facilities that are allowed in Michigan, potentially, if local governments allow them to move forward, and also to gain an initial level of public input as to whether or not to allow such facilities within the city of Farmington Hills. The following are the general steps for undertaking these efforts. One are these information gathering sessions that have started today, will be held today and tomorrow. Session 1, which is this session, is for growers of all classes as well as processors. Session 2, which will be held this afternoon, is for retailers, testing facilities / safety compliance, and secure transporters. And then session 3 that will be held tomorrow will be for micro businesses, designated consumption establishments, and temporary event organizers. After these industry sessions are completed, there will be information gathering from other municipalities that currently have facilities that are operating. And then finally, as part of this plan, there will be public outreach where the public will have an opportunity to also provide comments for City Council to consider. And as I mentioned, today's session is the first one for growers and processors. We have industry representatives that are on this Zoom call who have volunteered, and we want to thank you for your time in volunteering to share information with the city as part of this information gathering process. So before we get started, there are a few ground rules that I wanted to go over. First of all the panelists are currently muted. Please remain muted until we get to the question and answer portion. The city has prepared a series of questions that have been provided to you in advance of today's meeting. I'm going to be asking those in sequence, and then participants will be allowed to respond once the question's been posed. Please raise your hand using the webinar controls if you would like to answer a question once it's been asked. If you're having issues with the webinar controls, if you're using a PC, if you do Alt-Y on your keyboard, that will raise your hand, and Alt-Y will also lower your hand. If you happen to be on a Mac, Option-Y will do the same thing. It'll raise your hand, and then Option-Y will also lower your hand. Once you have been acknowledged and are answering, you will have up to 3 minutes to answer the question. We will be timing just because we want to be fair and give everybody an opportunity to answer the questions. Also, during this webinar, members of the public and others watching will be able to submit questions via either email or through Zoom Q&A. The email address, if you're interested in that, is fhclerk@fhgov.com. And then also you can do it through the Q&A session. Also, we want to make sure that you know that the City Council is going to receive all questions. We're looking to conduct this session within a maximum time of 1.5 hours. If we don't get to all the questions, you can submit supplemental information. That email address is available, and as long as that information is received by 4:30 p.m. this Friday, March 18th, 2022, it will be included in the report to City Council. If it comes after that time, it will not be included in that report to City Council. As I mentioned at the beginning, this session is being recorded and is being live streamed on YouTube. Please limit your answers to the question that has been asked. Remember, 3 minutes per response. Also, if someone has already answered in the way you would have answered, please try not to take up our time in repeating the same answer over and over again. You could, if you want to indicate that you agree with another speaker, that's fine. We're trying to respect everybody's time and try to get to as many questions as possible. In the event that you start to venture away from the topic and the question that has been asked, I may give you a gentle nudge and reminder to please stay on topic. So we appreciate your cooperation. So I wanted to start off by asking panelists to introduce themselves. Call you out in a list that I have in terms of the names that were submitted. So Brady Goodman, would you like to introduce yourself? You can unmute yourself and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this panel. It's very interesting. It's very exciting to see that Farmington Hills is considering entering into the cannabis world. I am a resident of Farmington Hills. This is my 25th year. So I've been here a quarter of a century as a resident in the community, and I love my time in Farmington Hills. My name is Brady Goodman. I'm the Goodman and Goodman Acker, which is a personal injury law firm that's situated in Southfield. I've been the president of the trial lawyers. I've been the chair of the negligence section of the state bar. I sit on a DNC. I'm currently Governor Whitmer's finance chair, and so I'm very active in that side of things. And I am, most importantly to this panel, I own a vertically integrated company by the name of Freddy's LLC. It's up in Clio, Michigan, about 10 miles north of Flint. I have 7 acres up there with a retail establishment and a grow and a processing department attached and behind. So I'm very excited about the possibility of Farmington Hills being involved. And though I am a grower, and that's why I decided to be a participant in this, my interest, candidly, is in the retail side of things in the community that I reside in. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next on my list, I have Namir Haddad. Would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, he's not responding, so I'm going to go on to the next one. Annette Cappo.
Hi, good morning. Annette Cappo. Once again, thank you for allowing us this opportunity. Local resident of Farmington Hills, also multiple business owner in Farmington and Farmington Hills. I am the proud owner of Care by Design Market as well as Freshwater Cannabis. We're a vertically integrated company, both on the hemp side as a licensed grower with MDARD, and from seed to sale on the hemp and CBD side, as well as now on the freshwater cannabis side, vertically integrated. We have 2 stores currently in the state of Michigan. I come from 35 years of being in a real estate broker in the local area here, and just really excited to be part of, a community leader within my hometown and to see where, we're going, not only as a resident of Farmington Hills, but also a business owner.
Thank you. All right, next on the list, I have Rafi Mushi. I'm saying that correctly, hopefully.
I'm sorry, I was trouble unmuting it. My name is Rafi Mushi again. I own a company called Premier Grow. We are in Detroit, Michigan. We are a licensed medical marijuana facility currently. To my knowledge, Detroit is voting on their recreational issues today. We have a 1,000 plant facility. We are currently building out our second facility next door, which is going to be 6,000 plants. We are trying to build a national brand. We have a licensing agreement with Thomas Hearns for a wellness brand that we're trying to launch nationwide, which will include CBD products and wellness products, along with cannabis products. And thank you for having me. I hope I can contribute something valuable to the discussion. And that's about it.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
I see Shant Mirjian, although I don't see, looks like they're logged in. They were on the list. Maybe they did not make it on.
Shant was with our company. He's currently no longer with the company.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Jim Laporte.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am the Vice President for VB Chestnut. We were the first licensed cultivator in the state. We are Chestnut, if you do or don't know, is about, well, not far from Clio. It's about 20 miles west of 75, just north of Flint. I work directly for Tom Chilani and his family office in Novi. Tom is a longtime business owner in Farmington Hills, having owned, well, just recently sold Motor City Harley Davidson. We have about 120,000 square foot facility in Chestnut, where we cultivate, manufacture Wana and Kiva products for the state. We are the licensor and distributor of a manufacturer of that product here in the state. We also have an extraction facility there as well. And we probably cultivate close to 25,000 plants. And are obviously interested in, we are vertically integrated. We do have a store over in Grand Rapids and are currently in negotiations over several other retail outlets, and are looking to obviously expand our retail footprint in the state. So, but happy to be here today, and hopefully I can help answer some questions.
Okay,
Thank you for
very much.
having me.
Thank you. Next up is Connie Maxim Sparrow.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm the owner of Spro Consulting, which is a licensing, strategic business development, and compliance firm that predominantly works in the cannabis space. My background is 25 years in public policy at the federal, state, and local level, working with the Department of Homeland Security, the CDC, state government, as well as local government as it relates to planning, zoning, and business and economic development. I think for this group, I bring a very unique perspective, as I already have existing municipal clients as well as cannabis clients, where I sit in the middle and help to facilitate a successful implementation for our municipalities, as well as a successful application process, licensing and operations process for cannabis owners.
Thank you very much. Next up is Fred Lumage.
Hi there, this is Fred Lumage. I'm with Lemon Leaf. I am from West Bloomfield. My background on this industry is really caregiving, but I am excited to be a part of this industry, and hopefully I can have a say on this. And my background really is in construction, and I would so I'm a licensed for 2000 C-class grower, adult C-class, and we hope to be a part of this.
Okay, thank you very much. And then last one on the list I have here is Kimberley Klein.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Kimberley Klein. I'm the Business Licensing Administrator and Social Equity Consultant for Exclusive Brands. My background is really in education administration and international relations. I think that the cannabis industry is great because you can come from any background and have a part in it. Our flagship store is located in Ann Arbor, where we are vertically integrated. We have a grow, a processing facility, and a retail facility. And I really appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to learn from you all today.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our questions now. So our first question is that the city of Farmington Hills is collecting information from industry representatives today in order to learn more about the business of growing and processing cannabis. Are there specific examples that you can provide where permitting growers and processors has led to an increase in economic development in that specific area? And are there communities that you can identify where that has happened? Anybody want to raise their hand? And I see Connie is up first. So Connie, you want to go ahead and give the first response?
Absolutely. So good morning. I think this is one of your best questions that you have on the list. One of the reasons that I worked very hard in Muskegon County to get our municipalities opted in is because I had spent some time working on economic development at the county level, and had really realized pretty quickly that cannabis was going to bring some property development and some much needed tax revenue related to those property improvements should the municipalities in Muskegon County opt in. I think that if you were to look at Muskegon, the city of Muskegon, Muskegon Township, the city of Whitehall, Eggleston Township, and Holton, you would definitely see that all of those municipalities combined have brought in several millions of dollars of property upgrades related to blighted or property that has been abandoned for substantial amounts of time. As a planning person, as an expert in planning from a municipality standpoint, I think that opting into cannabis in all of its forms is only going to bring even more economic development and property tax to you guys. The second part of that is looking at the excise tax and the new line of revenue that is involved in that. And as you look at the excise tax and its share of tax revenue sharing to municipalities, as well as county sheriffs and the counties themselves, we are seeing substantial lines of new revenue coming into local units of government, things that we haven't seen in a very long time. I'm sure that Farmington Hills is aware of how difficult it is to create a new revenue stream. Those don't come very often. And I can tell you that Muskegon County and the municipalities that have opted in have seen and reaped the benefits to the point that they're adding on more staff and they have better ability to support their planning and zoning efforts.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, next hand up was Brady Goodman.
Yeah, hi. Again, Brady is located in Thetford Township, north of Flint. Thetford Township could go down as one of the more significantly economically depressed areas in the state, unlike Farmington Hills, for instance. But, and I have a retail business and a grow and a process there. We invested in a property of 7 acres that had rundown buildings that was like ready to be condemned. There was a small building that was actually a black market dispensary, but we took that over, we rehabbed it completely. Property taxes, of course, immediately went up. And as we invested hard in the property and made significant improvements, it's now a viable grow and retail facility. It's up to code and producing revenue for the community. There are about, I believe, 7 or 8 facilities, grows, processes, retail in the Thetford Township area. And just retail alone, the statistics out of the state in 2021 produced an average of $28,000 in revenue sharing to municipalities for each retail license in the community. That's expected to increase. The revenue that comes from the increased property taxes due to the improvements in revenue sharing from the cannabis industry paid by the state have allowed Thetford to go from one part-time police officer, for instance, and they use the state police to help, that they've actually stepped up their all their public state workers in terms of new police officers, firefighters. The cannabis industry in a small area like Thetford Township has created an ability for Thetford Township to do what they would never have thought in a million years they could. Farmington Hills has a step up on most communities. We're a great, successful community, but with inflation, which everything going on, revenue sharing will make a major impact in Farmington Hills, and you guys can try to designate where you'd like to put those dollars in terms of advancement of community improvements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, I see Jim Laporte.
Without being redundant, I can express just about everything Mr. Goodman said. We've had the same effect on Chesning and the community, from property tax revenue to increased property values to our effect on local purchasing as we're expanding and building and buying products locally. The community has been, affected greatly, I think, by our presence and others in the community. We have roughly 250 jobs at the facility. I think we're the largest employer in the area. So just that alone, the multiple effect of that money being spent in the community and restaurants and new restaurants opening up. And you can see the, certain construction projects going on that the city has implemented and built, and just the refreshing of the whole community since we've been there. I'm not going to say we're fully responsible for all of that, but I think we've had a huge effect on everyone in the community. So we've been, I think, a great benefit up there, along with everybody else that's in the area with us.
Thank you. All right, I believe Annette Cappo was next.
Thank you. Once again, not to be redundant, I think the biggest things that haven't been said a little bit is about the wages, bringing people into the different areas that we've done development in, which currently right now is Sault Ste. Marie, Baldwin, White Cloud, and as well as obviously we have a store in Farmington. What we've seen is the average wage that our team members are making is on the higher end for the industry, which I think is something that is refreshing, because now we're really truly impacting people's lives and their families when they're earning more per hour. We also noticed that obviously our tax bills are increasing, which is always good. One of the developments we have is a completely vacant 23 acres, and to put improvements, buildings, as well. We're seeing the local township of Pleasant Plains be impacted by us doing business there. The last thing I want to just mention as well is because our companies come full circle with community involvement and contribution. I think that the local nonprofits are benefiting from, what we're doing as an industry, but as well as my personal company. I know, even just simple things like Cares of Farmington Hills, I was really active in with our stores here, as well as my real estate company. So we're engaging with the community at a deeper level and hitting some social issues, besides social equity, but also hunger and a lot of different social challenges. Having the correct partner in those cities can do. And then, of course, the last thing I want to address that I believe is the benefit is just coming from my background of being active in the chamber and small business and supporting small business. We're seeing other businesses start to pop up around our developments. People are more engaging with the community at the chamber level. And that's what I get excited about, because it's not just one industry, it's multiple industries and how it's impacting the community as a whole.
Thank you. All right, Kimberley Klein, I believe you're next.
Thank you. I really love how Annette spoke about the community. When we talk about economic development, we think creation of jobs. Of course, that comes along with allowing cannabis into municipalities. But another thing that I love about the state of Michigan is that rules and regulations allow for municipalities to have their own agency in how they relate to their communities and what they require of cannabis operators. So yes, of course, we've been able to create more jobs. You know, our processing facility alone in Ann Arbor has over 125 people, all from different backgrounds. I mean, we hire people with backgrounds in nursing, students who are 21 or older, people who have backgrounds as chefs in science, you know, so we're able to employ people from a ton of different backgrounds. But the other thing is we've been able to help some grassroots organizations in the communities that we're involved with. And it helps push and drive social equity efforts that the state has and some municipalities actually require. And that is my favorite part about working in the cannabis industry, is that we're able to influence real change on community and social levels. So, but one specific example that I have, the city manager from Lowell, for example, he's spoken greatly about the tax revenue and what it's allowed his city to do, such as take on full-time city employees, repair local roads. And it's something that the city manager in Lowell was not expecting to be able to do when the city opted in for cannabis. So.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else who has not provided an answer to this question want to provide an answer, or? Raise your hand if you want to. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question. All right. Mr. Lamage, did you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll have actually my employee
Hello, guys. How you
take
doing
this
this morning?
question on that behalf.
I started.
Could you state your name, please?
I'm sorry. It's
Damian.
Damian Linton. I'm a caregiver, licensed in the state of Michigan.
Okay, thank you.
I started growing in Walt Lake, and when I moved there, it wasn't really much development going on in the city. Over the past 8 years, I watched it, like literally, they're putting up a new subdivision like everywhere in the city now. You know, and I honestly think that's contributing to the cannabis industry. You know, you have Loon, Bonanzo's, and famous greenhouse in Walt Lake. And, you know, everywhere you go, you see traffic, you know what I mean? It's just an abundance of finance, you know, in the city. I've also worked for H2 Hydro, which is the biggest hydro store in Michigan. And, you know, I've spoke to commercial growers and caregivers all day long, you know, and you can tell, like, the revenue is just, you know, amazing for the city, just for everybody, you know. So I honestly feel like it would be a really good thing, you know.
Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it. Anyone else who has not answered, like to raise their hand and provide a response? All right, let's move on to our second question. The second question deals with odor. Odor is often cited as a primary negative impact related to growing and processing cannabis. What has been your experience dealing with the external impacts of odor? Have you had success with correcting an odor issue that was raised? And if so, where was your success and what type of measures were used to address the concerns? So I believe Mr. Laporte had his hand up first. So we're going to, Mr. Jim Laporte.
Yes, sir. Yeah, our facility is actually right in a residential community right within the city of Chestnut. So we've had, you know, individuals in and around that, you know, live in and around our facility that at times have been, you know, not happy about the odor early on. And it was certainly something that they made the city council aware of. And then, so we just continue to work with the city, work with the neighbors nearby. We've actually, our facility has completely sealed off our facility. All of our HVAC is all circulated inside. We don't take in any outside air. We do have a facility. We do have a greenhouse at our facility, which has additional equipment that's put on the exhaust side of the greenhouse, that once the greenhouse starts to exhaust, it it's eliminated through this equipment. We also have equipment that's been set up around our property externally to measure the odor that's being released from our facility. So we've done everything we could possibly do, I guess, at this point, that's available to us within the industry to eliminate any odor that comes from the facility. Now that's not to say that there isn't some level of odor that's going to escape the facility. So harvest days, et cetera, that you might, doors are being opened and closed and things are going on, and you are going to have some level of odor that does leave the facility. But we've gone to great lengths to try to eliminate that in the community. And I think the city's been happy with our efforts. They understand that we can't be 100% efficient in that manner, but given our facility and where it sits, I think we've done everything possible to date that we could do to assist in that.
Thank you. Mr. Lamage, I believe you're next.
So my experience with odor is I've been to a few greenhouses. I've set them up and grow facilities as well. And it basically is building a room inside of a room. You have to, you have to build your grow room inside the building. So insulated walls, UV filtration, carbon filters, and stacks, definitely. The higher you go in the atmosphere, of course, is the more odor dissipates. So, I've never technically had problems, so to say, with odor outside the building. We take very good measures to make sure that doesn't happen, to keep, just to stay discreet as much as possible. You don't really want, people complaining that's around you, so I say UV filters and ozone generators with exhaust fans will, definitely help dissipate the odor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goodman, you're next.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'll add to what Mr. Myers Grower stated, in that we also use carbon filters in the ventilation system, which is typically how odor is contained, so that any air that's pushed to the outside of our building has to go through the filtration system and go through these carbon filters, and there will not be odor escaping the buildings. We've never had a complaint in the 3 years that we've been open. I will tell you that the MRA and Laura have regulated this industry more than probably any other industry on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you almost can't go to the bathroom without figuring out if you've met Laura's regulations and how you actually do that. I'm being a little over the top, but really not that much. In addition to the fact that if there's any odor issues, MRA would jump in and say, you have to fix this right away. But the city of Farmington Hills, like most other government entities, has public nuisance ordinances. And if there is an escape of an odor that from a grow facility that is in Farmington Hills, and somebody complains and it actually is true, then Farmington Hills can step in and stop it, have them stop operating until it's fixed. You have that internal ability. Odors that affect any neighborhood properties are a public nuisance. So that everyone should make sure that the facilities have the funding to properly outfit their buildings with odor control systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Annette Cappo is next.
Thank you. Annette Cappo. One, I think the biggest thing is just to tag on is that facility development has advanced so fast, and we're not the first state that is now growing marijuana. And so, we're getting the benefits of the technology that's advancing quicker and quicker. With us, it's about facility layout. How are our rooms laid out? How are the internal wall structures that, can control the smell, as well as, just looking at how we are a better neighbor for the local businesses in the area. So making sure even like our lighting schedule, we have certain, structures in place to make sure that our building isn't glowing at night. And just taking that into all the consideration, it is about funding and making sure that you're able to, build a facility that not only is complementary of the vision of the company, but also a good neighbor in the communities. And that's what's been a win-win for us when we started off growing hemp and now growing into the marijuana industry.
Thank you. Connie, Maxim Sparrow, you're next, please.
This is a great question. I think for the municipality, for Farmington Hills, as you guys look to develop ordinances and you look to establish those qualifying, areas of planning and business planning that you're looking at from licensees potentially establishing operations in your business. Farmington Hills is a pretty populated area. It is an urban area. And so odor mitigation is something that should be top of your list. I think that from the standpoint of, I know everybody's talked about the facilities and carbon and ozone and all of those facility specific technologies that are out there. I think the bottom line is that Farmington Hills needs to ensure that anybody potentially applying in Farmington Hills has a neighborhood outreach plan, a plan to work with their neighborhood associations, and a plan to do documented compliance related to tracking and reporting any nuisance of odor to that neighborhood association and the city of Farmington Hills. The last thing that I would hate to see is the city of Farmington Hills be overburdened with complaints from residents related to odor when it is really on the operators to ensure that they are not a nuisance. And so as you look at potentially opting in, it is very important that when you develop application materials that you ask for things and expect things of the licensees related to protecting their residents around them, as well as the community and the businesses around them. I would also suggest that Farmington Hills also put in their application process, reach out to neighborhood associations for these licensees that potentially want to operate there, to have neighborhood meetings with your neighborhood associations to ensure that they are aware of how this works. Because the only way that this works for both the city of Farmington Hills, your residents and business owners, which you guys have 80,000 people, and then the cannabis operators, is if you start to develop those relationships and have those community conversations long before they're ever issued a license. They need to be planning for it, and they need to be responsible for their odor issues, because even with the most advanced ozone technology or carbon filtration systems, you will have smell. That is the bottom line. And so it's really, really important that these operators are doing weekly and monthly checks for odor issues. They're reporting to their neighborhood associations as well as the city on how they're monitoring and improving it, so that they can demonstrate that they are in fact a good member of the community and that they're not just expecting the city to police them on this. It is their responsibility to handle it. So I would strongly suggest that Farmington Hills make sure to incorporate in their application process things that ensure that these licensees are in fact being good neighbors.
Thank you. Next up is Kimberley Klein.
Thank you. Connie and Barry actually touched on the two things that I was going to mention. So to reiterate, the MRA does require a comprehensive odor control plan, and so do many municipalities. I also think that operators being aware of how the local community feels about the odor, and the municipality holding city hall meetings and things, if there ever are any residential complaints, is really important. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I don't want to take up too much more time. They said everything that I wanted to touch on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else who hasn't spoken want to provide an answer to this question? Okay, looks like we've covered it. Let's move on to the third question. If the city were to opt in and allow growing and processing facilities, what is your opinion as to whether it is better to permit them to be located within industrial parks with other industrial users, or would you prefer to have several cannabis growers and processors concentrated in distinct geographical areas, special zones, for example? Why is one better than the other? What is your preference? And I appreciate Mr. Goodman. I think you're the first one to respond.
I feel like this is Jeopardy. If the city wants to use cannabis facilities as an economic development tool. It's probably best to permit them to be located within industrial parks with other industrial users. This way, potential operators can focus on available industrial properties for development and redevelopment so that you can fill the ones that are already empty and hurting through the pandemic and everything else. You're reinvigorating these parks. If the city chooses just one distinct area, it could also cause a huge increase in property values in just that area and would displace functioning businesses because they just would want to cash out for the property value. I think you're going to find, if Farmington Hills is like another city, that people are going to run in and buy a property, not that even want to have cannabis businesses, but they're going to buy a property in areas that you might designate and then sell it for 10 times, the price that they paid for it to any cannabis business that needed to then find a location. So filling industrial parks is a great way to ensure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Connie, Maxim Sparrow, you're next.
I think zoning is a challenge in any municipality. There are several litigation efforts going on across the state of Michigan that I think Farmington Hills needs to learn some lessons from. We've had several examples of both ways being moved forward, and it seems that no matter what, zoning and land use seems to be something that brings up a lot of risk and litigation on the part of the municipality. As the previous speaker mentioned, from an economic development standpoint, we would, looking at targeting those buildings that are either abandoned, vacant, or have been traditionally underutilized is key. I don't think that cannabis really cares where they operate. I think that they could operate in a variety of commercial zoning. I have growers and processors across the United States in various commercial as well as industrial zone property. I think it's more making sure that you have a process to be able to easily interpret that zoning, maybe even a GIS map to help people guide that zoning process, which is very difficult for cannabis operators unless they have a real estate or an attorney or a planning consultant like myself. Zoning can be tricky for people to understand. And I would also strongly encourage not limiting licenses, as it relates to processors and growers really puts a challenge in the hands of the municipality. And I can tell you that those limited licenses, and I understand retail limited licenses, I get that. But from the processors or growers, and the other categories, limiting those licenses is only opening that municipality up for more risk. And so I would strongly recommend that whatever zoning is available that you guys are looking at, obviously uses as an economic development tool, but also just be aware and be conscious of the fact that limiting any licenses as it relates to the property that you have really opens that municipality up to litigation. And I would hate to see that happen.
Thank you. Kimberley Klein, you're up next.
Yeah, so just a few things from a licensing standpoint. I think if processors are going to be connected to retailers, it makes more sense to allow light industrial or commercial areas to hold the facilities. When I was looking at this question, I also thought to myself, if processing licenses can be stacked with retail licenses, it could help some of the companies in that they wouldn't need to get a separate transporter license if they're processing their own product and selling their own product. So just a couple things to think about.
Appreciate that. Annette Cappo, you're next.
I think just to tag on to that as well is that, creating the zone for the specific types of cannabis industry leaders is going to be really critical, because you don't want to create a gridlock where people are not able to develop what they need. And like she mentioned, allowing that zoning of certain parts of this industry come together allows for a little bit more of a synergy in higher use for those companies. And, I know that when I've gone into certain areas where I've had to rezone or ask for a special use, it kind of gridlocks the system, and it gets into months, possibly years for any type of rezoning to happen. So I would like Farmington Hills to kind of look at the area in the larger picture and really design what is going to be best for our community as well as for the businesses. So that way we can plug in the licenses into those spaces in an efficient way.
Thank you. Rafi Mushi, you're next.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes.
Okay. My perspective on it as a grower would be that the industrial areas would be the best, and would give the most flexibility for me as a businessman. But on the flip side of it, as Mr. Goodman said, if you choose a designated area, I think it's going to draw a lot of speculators that are going to profit instead of the businessmen that are going to continue to contribute to the city. On the other hand of that, if you did designate an area that needed the development, I think it would create the most economic impact for Farmington Hills if you chose an area that needed to have higher occupancy and more commerce going on. I think designating an area would be great. But like I said, concurring with Mr. Goodman, that that's more likely to create a lot of people coming in and buying up a bunch of property and sitting on it and taxing businessmen like myself that want to purchase them. So I think there's two ways to look at it. It needs to be carefully considered. For the city, I think it would be better to designate a certain area. As a businessman, I think I would prefer to have the flexibility of choosing an industrial parks and different areas. I think it would be more economical. But as I said, if I were sitting in the city's shoes, I would try to designate an area that needs the most development to make that the zone for cannabis development.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
And I don't see any other hands, so we're going to move on to our next question. All right, our next question deals with crime. What has been your experience with crime within or near cannabis facilities? And how have you addressed security issues and concerns that have been voiced by people living and working near these types of businesses? Jim Laporte, I believe your hand is up first.
Yeah, just generally, we've had absolutely no issues at our facility in Chestnut with regard to crime. We have armed security on site, and we are essentially a 24-hour facility. So they do hourly walkarounds and checking the facility, and I'm not sure that's a deterrent or not, but to date, we've really had essentially no issues from a security or crime issue relative to our facility there.
Okay, thank you. I believe Connie Maxim Sparrow, you were next.
From the aspect of crime, it's interesting. I think that this is a stigma issue to some degree. Inherently, any operation that carries a product like cannabis has risk to it. I think very similar to odor mitigation, it really is very important that the city make sure that those plans that are being submitted in for security meet the state's expectations, but also engage your neighborhood associations. I have more than 100 licenses in the state of Michigan that are operating. I have yet to see any sort of security issue with any of them. And most of them do not have armed guards. They have guards, a few of them, but most of them don't even have a security guard. And we're in various municipalities across the state of Michigan and in the nation. And so I have not seen any real major security issues. However, that doesn't mean that planning is not important and that security plans are being followed. I think that crime being an issue is something in the city's perspective. We're not seeing that. And a lot of us have been in this industry for more than 5 years. It's just not something we're seeing.
Thank you. Barry Goodman, I believe you're next.
Great. Well, the security requirements of the grower processing prevent types of serious crime. There are cameras required through the MRA covering the entire interior of the building and a 20-foot radius outside the building at a minimum. Only employees, contractors, authorized visitors, or MRA law enforcement are permitted to enter the facility. There's a 30-day requirement for saving the video footage from all cameras. Your product has to be locked and secured. The buildings are typically discreet. They're not advertising for the product, which does not attract attention. And as they say, operators have security alarms, other theft protection systems. Every ounce of product is tracked by the state metric system. Product is delivered and shipped through a licensed secured transporter. And most of the reports of any crime, theft, or other issues relating to marijuana are the unlicensed operators who are not following the rules. In fact, I sent to Pam, your clerk, yesterday, since everybody loves statistics and things like that, I sent something out of the major cannabis information company in the country called Leafly, which is a special report which is debunking dispensary myths. And it's basically a literature review that finds cannabis stores are associated with lower crime, decreased teen use, and increased property values, and laying out all the statistics in here. I sent it to Pam, asked that everyone who would want one, whether it be public, all the city council members, anybody, get a copy of this, review it. It will set everyone at ease in terms of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Rafi Mushi, I believe you're up next.
My facility, as I said, is in Detroit, and we are a 1,000 plant facility. We do not have a security guard at this time, and we are quite honestly in a very, very rough neighborhood. And like Mr. Goodman said, we follow every state requirement regarding transport, cameras, and every rule that's required of us. And we haven't had any problems in a very, very rough neighborhood. We have a good relationship with, it's an industrial area, but we have a neighborhood across the street. We're on good terms with all our neighbors. They've been nice enough to even call me if they've noticed anything suspicious in the evening or whatnot. But I would agree that the legally licensed businesses that are following all of the requirements, your risk is minimal, and most of the crime is on the illegal side when people are in houses in rough neighborhoods without cameras and things of that nature. And you hear of like big illegal grows in California that get robbed and by all types of gangsters. But being in a very, very sketchy neighborhood that's very industrial, we have not had any problems. And I would agree that it's based on the rules that the state has put in place to protect us in our industry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kimberley Klein, I believe you're up next.
Thank you. Yeah, so aside from the security protocols that are required from cannabis companies, bear in mind that most cannabis companies hold their greatest value in their inventories. So they put security and safety above all else. Another thing that we've been able to do, fortunately, usually during the planning stages, and our site planning stages, when we go to the municipalities and show them our drawings and everything, we've been able to meet local police officers, and they are more than happy to speak with us one-on-one about what the crime looks like in the municipality in general. We show them our drawings, and they also give us some feedback about what our security measures look like, and if they have anything for us to add. It's a good way to finalize our designs for our security protocols. Some of them, we've invited them to take a walkthrough through our store. So, the community is a major aspect anytime that we apply for a license in any municipality. So, and since, Farmington Hills has the agency to include whatever they deem necessary in their security measures, that could be something that you could think about, just adding that the local police department also have a say in what the security measures look like for any designs or any plans, something to consider.
Thank you. Annette Cappo.
Thank you. I think the biggest word that we could use here is deterrent. Coming up with the systems that the MRA is requiring of us, I think that's probably the first thing that allows us to really invest into what we consider, a deterrent that people don't want, and it's not accessible, for the crime that someone's going to commit. We also, the use of key cards, I think that allows a little bit more control, and as well as just, when we look at how the MRA is handling even our seed to sale metric system. I mean, we talk about the crime on the outside, but what about potential crime on the inside as well, is making sure that we're monitoring as owners, what's happening within our facilities. And so, the MRA has us down very tightly with our metric system. So anything that comes in is having to be tagged, and we know, and they know exactly where that is at all the way through to those finished products. So, once again, all deterrence, because none of us really want that to happen. And all it does is create, issues within our companies, as well as the communities. So I think that, the base plan of where this industry is going is strong, and just partnering with the local municipalities and allowing them to ask us questions and, to be part of the decision-making process of maybe some special situations that you don't see in every single community that are being addressed by, the men in blue and the firefighters as well, because we got to remember as well fire safety. So just partnering with them and making sure that we're answering the correct questions in making sure that we're deterring any potential situation in the future.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity to respond? I don't see any other hands. Okay, well, I'm going to go on to the next question. If the city were to opt in and allow growing and processing facilities, what is your opinion as to whether it would be better to have them in taller structures that allow for vertical stacking of grow operations? And are there other unique site design features that the city should be aware of? If so, do growing operations require a particular ceiling height the city should be aware of? Rafi Mushi, you have your hand up first.
Yes, my current facility is just single tiered, and we are the second facility next door that we're getting ready to start construction on is going to be multi-tiered. And my grower has no problem with it, but I know that everybody is not savvy enough of a grower to handle the multi-tier situation because of the environmental issues. Maintaining consistent humidity and temperature throughout the entire room at different levels. Personally, as a grower, I think that would be not reasonable for the city to, I think it's reasonable to allow it, but I don't think it would be reasonable to require to say use less real estate space to require multi-tiered facilities. But I think it's definitely should be available as an option. And I think the grower should have the flexibility to grow the way he grows best to ensure the highest quality.
Thank you.
Yes.
Connie, Maxim Spro.
So actually, I don't have much to say on whether it's larger structures or smaller structures. Every grower grows differently, and I think that that's the most important part of this. I can look at a master grower from one facility, and they would prefer it to be one way. I can look at a master grower from another facility, and they're asking for it another way. And so I think the key is flexibility on the part of the city. Relating to zoning, because zoning is going to be their biggest barrier. They'll find a building that fits their needs, especially as they look at, their growing mediums, how they grow, the frequency that they're harvesting, their cultivation schedules. I don't necessarily think it's so much as how tall the building is, so much as it's the flexibility to choose the building that fits their business model best. And I'm just throwing this in here. I did see a question that was in the group with the participants, and I'm just going to answer it because I think I screwed up answering it to Gary. He had asked about the tracking system and chain of custody for cannabis. And I just want to let Gary know that we do have a metric system, and it tracks everything from a plant 8 inches and above through the point that it ends up being delivered to a retail or medical customer that is in a system called Metric, and every single plant is tagged, and that tag follows that plant as it goes through cultivation to processing to packaging to retail, and it's all handled through a secure transporter. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Annette Cappo.
I think we have to remember that this is a plant, and in big agricultural, it's a plant that's grown. So there's still a human contact in it. Yeah, we have automated processes, multi-tiered, but the grower has to feel like they can grow the best in the best environment. Our biggest concern when we get into multi-tier just is the health and safety of our team. Getting into a higher multi-tier, we just want to be concerned with making sure that where our irrigation lines are at, our fire suppression systems are at, making sure that if someone's climbing up on a ladder, what does that look like? And so we tend to just stay on the single level and give the plants the room that they need to grow in, so that way they're growing a better product. But once again, just to confirm, what everyone is saying is allowing the grower to have the flexibility in the environment that they need to do the best work that they do.
Okay, thank you. Barry Goodman, you're next.
Yeah, I don't want to reiterate. It is up to the community, Farmington Hills in this case, to make changes to regulation if they want to. I think it should be left up to the growers. They're getting property to determine how high. First building that I had was just a normal 10-foot tall. So we have single level. We're now building additional buildings, and we're putting 2 levels in one and 3 in another. You need at least 8 to 10 feet per level. So you're going to have to put up a building that's 25 feet high, at least, if you're doing 3. The main reason that I think about having stacking is it's environmentally better, because you're putting less of a footprint on the land that you're growing on, and allowing the rest of the land to be land rather than just covered with the buildings. But there's plenty out there. Again, growers, I haven't met 2 growers that will agree on everything. So, and there's thousands of them, and there are many of them that are very good. It's a science. I remember going through, when I was a little kid, 5, 6, 7 years old, running around, I loved to pick the dandelions that my parents couldn't get rid of no matter what they put on. Weeds are crazy, and this is a weed, and yet it's harder to grow than a plant. I mean, there is more science involved in this than anything else that I've come across, and to be done right, you can stack double, triple, single. It's up to a particular grower. It's up to the particular owner of that complex. I just think the higher you go, the less land you use, and that's the only reason in my mind that touches on the environment. Other than that, I think it's the choice of the person that wins the application process within your community.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next question. What premium site building or landscape design elements do you think applicants would be willing to provide in order to make your site an asset in the city? Connie, Maxim Sparrow, you're up first.
This is an interesting question, and I think one of the most valuable questions in the list. I think there's lots of lessons to be learned from other municipalities that have opted in over the course of the last 5 years, either under medical or adult use. I see a lot of municipalities asking cannabis operators and business startups, especially in a business setting where we have social equity and entrepreneurs who face extensive barriers to entry on just build out and raising capital. And what I'm seeing is municipalities, instead of treating cannabis like any other business and site plan expectations for build out, they're actually taking it substantially more extreme. They're asking for things like green roofs. They're asking for permeable pavement and stormwater management systems that are just extensive. They're costing $100,000, $250,000 to be able to manage stormwater in a parking lot, that if you were a hospital or if you were a warehouse, the municipality would not be asking for those things because it's not cannabis. And so as I say that, I have municipalities right now that are implementing pretty extensive form-based code landscape design expectations, even though those properties don't even provide enough acreage to be able to plant said ratio of trees. And so I have municipalities who are now saying, well, you don't need to put those trees on your property. We understand it doesn't fit, but you can go ahead and donate that $95,000 to the city and we'll plant them for you. I'm also seeing that with street lights. I'm seeing that with decorative lights on the building. I'm seeing blight efforts coming forward where the cities are asking for all windows to be replaced, all roofs to be replaced, though they may not need to be replaced. And so I would ask the city of Farmington Hills to implement what you would implement with any other business in your city as it relates to a site plan. I see this a lot, and I think it's a challenge. And I think it's a challenge for cannabis when they're spending upwards of $5 and $7 million to get some larger facilities open for a municipality to come at them and say, oh, by the way, we want a green roof and an environmentally sustainable site plan that's going to cost you $500,000. As we're looking at making sure we can get entrepreneurs into this economic development generator, I would be cautious to be asking for things like donations of payments for trees or streetlights or the other thing that's happening is municipalities are actually putting the burden of updating roads and intersections because cannabis should pay for it when those aren't the way that municipalities handle any other operator. But for some reason, cannabis is somebody that's been expected to produce exorbitant amounts of site plan expectations because I think the municipalities see an opportunity because they know cannabis is very excited to be able to just live, work, and play in your communities. I would simply ask that we not take advantage of this process and ensure that we're keeping the same standards for site design as we do any other operating industry in the city of Farmington Hills. It really does become a barrier to entry for entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I think that is very important.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Barry Goodman, you're up next.
Yeah, Connie's right on in terms of what needs to be done. I think that to go back to the prior question, if you're looking to have the growers and processors go into standing industrial parks, there's a lot less that they have to do. They don't own that. They're renting that from the industrial park owner. And so the requirements may be different. Especially growers and processors, their curb appeal is almost not wanting to be seen and known. So there's not a lot of design expectation or landscaping or this or that, other than maybe a decorative screening instead of a barbed wire fence to go around the facility if you're building one from scratch. I think this is more important when it comes to retail. And I don't think you have to do much in regards to retail because everybody's going to go out and have the thing, try to put together the nicest design, the nicest interior. They're going to look like jewelry stores or other, retail establishments. They're going to be the pride of Farmington Hills without any necessity of telling us what to do, because on the retail side, we want to stand out and we want to look as good as any other retail, if not better, that's in the strip mall or wherever it might be. So again, I think that there's not a lot as far as landscaping requirements because it's just going to get done, or someone's going to open their doors and not have anybody go in because this person would rather go to the cool one down the street. So I think you're pretty well set in terms of that. I don't think you need a lot of interior ordinance requirements that's going to make this more difficult.
Okay. Thank you. Annette Cappo, you're next.
I like where you asked us, what's going to make this site an asset to the city? I love that question. I think one of the questions that I would be asking is that how is the city going to partner with us in regards to the development? I always look at real estate because I've been doing it for so long, is highest and best use. So for instance, my Baldwin facility, that's being built in regards to offering tours and education. So it's being built a specific way to be able to enhance the education of the industry. And so those types of situations are going to be different than our White Cloud facility, which is 100% a wholesale operation. We're looking at, getting the product in as less, public interaction as possible, just clean and, self-sustained. The questions that I would love to the city to be asking us, or even just sharing information to provide for us the best site as an asset, is like power and water consumption rates. how the city it can help us ease that process if there's any upgrades or improvements that we're going to need to be able to run our facilities better, as well as any type of green energy funding. I know, we've partnered with Pleasant Plains on bringing in different green funding, and that isn't just for cannabis, it's for other businesses as well, small businesses taking part in low interest rate funding. And that's the type of interaction that allows a site to become an asset to the city in my eyes.
Thank you very much. We also had another question come through with Q&A. Since we've got time to ask it, I'm going to ask it. This goes back to odor. What specific operation related to growing and processing tends to generate the most odor? Anybody want to take a stab at that one? Yes, Connie, Maxim Spirit.
Obviously, I'm not standing out measuring air quality. So I'm reflecting back on existing compliance situations that I have with 8 or 9 clients where I serve in a compliance capacity with them. Honestly, processors and growers, I believe, are the ones that are going to generate the most odor. Retail does generate odor, but it's not a lot. A lot of that is packaged. A lot of it is sealed up. Their vault obviously is pretty stinky. There's not much you can do about that. But I would secure transport, safety facilities, you're not going to see those types of odor issues. And I know this is specific to growers and processors. I really think that when you're looking at this, as long as they have the technologies in place, each one, it depends on the strain. Some strains are very stinky, others are not. I mean, there's so many variables that go into odor as it relates to those facilities. It's not necessarily that one has more odor over another one. It depends on the variables happening within that business operation that are going to dictate how much odor exists. So it goes back again to planning versus necessarily which one is more stinky than the other one, because honestly, they all have all of these odor mitigation strategies in place. Growers and processors just happen to be the ones that emit the most odor.
Thank you. Fred Lamanche.
Well, weeks 7 through 9, that's when you get the most odor out of the plant. So flower, yes, growers, we do give up the most odor. And when you also cut it and processing it, you get out of a lot of odor. But like I said, it's a building inside of a building. So, if you have a process room that's set up, carbon filters and, filtration system, you shouldn't have any problem with it dissipating or getting out the building. It's just all about containing the area in which you're doing it. So, everything will be sealed environment. Just to touch on that, if every grow room needs to be sealed, period. It's a controlled environment. So basically, we're trying to mimic what's going on inside of a building. So, if you have any kind of interference, that can throw off everything, the humidity, the heating, so you want to keep that all contained. So, building a room inside of a room, having a sealed environment is what we shoot for every time, So as far as odor goes, like I said, week 7 through 9, that's when you get the most odor out of the plant. And when you're cutting it down, processing it. But, the environment will be sealed, definitely.
Thank you. Annette Cappo, did you?
I also think that, looking at how we handle the team, obviously the smells come into the fabric of people's clothing, and those individuals are leaving our facilities. So making sure that we're using the correct techniques to not only protect our team members, but also protect them when they're going back into the community. I think that's a great opportunity for us to control odor. But once again, having the sealed rooms, knowing when we're omitting the most odor, making sure their VOCs are, looking, and containing within the facility. But I think it really comes as well down to the safety of our team members, not omitting odors outside when they leave.
Thank you. Jim Laporte.
Yeah, I think it's what everybody has said is all true. I think, probably one of our biggest issues, because we had a building that it was an old building in Chestnut that we came back and retrofitted for everything that we do. When we move from a grow room to where we dry and those types of things, you're moving them through open corridor areas, and it's just basically because of the setup of our facility, what we were given when we bought it, basically. So again, we try to seal off, we use all the odor containment that we can, but certainly during the weeks that the gentleman suggested, as well as during the actual harvest and moving the plants around in the facility, are probably our times when we experience the most, the possibility of odor escaping our facility.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have an answer for that one? Okay, well, I just want to have a couple of closing remarks. First of all, thank you, all of you, for your participation. I really appreciate you sticking to the questions that were answered, staying with the time limit. You guys did a great job, made my job easy. I really appreciate that. And I know City Council will be very pleased to have good quality information as part of this process. I also want to remind you that if you do have additional information that you want to submit, that email address is FHClerk@fhgov.com. Also, if you would like to participate as an attendee with the additional sessions, there will be another session at 2 o'clock this afternoon and another one at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So you're welcome to attend those as an attendee as well. So on behalf of the City of Farmington Hills, thank you for your time. And we appreciate it very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.